I owe you everything. I'm making you my partner, effective immediately.
Get away from him. Amara's voice cracked through the penthouse like thunder splitting the night. Her hands trembled as she stood between Damian Marston, slumped and half-conscious on the marble floor, and Julian Price, the man circling him with a phone raised like a weapon. The glow of the city bled through the glass walls behind them, silver and cruel. Julian sneered. "Relax, sweetheart. I'm just getting proof. The mighty Damian Marston, heir of Marston Industries, can't even walk straight. The press will eat this alive." "Delete it," Amara whispered, her heart pounding in her throat. Please. She was small compared to him. A slight woman in a plain gray uniform, hair tied under a black scarf, apron still damp from washing dishes. But there was something immovable in her stance. Julian chuckled. "Who do you think you are, the help? Don't worry, sweetheart. He won't even remember this tomorrow." She didn't think. She moved. One hand darted out, grabbing the phone. He cursed, pulling back, but she held on, nails digging into his wrist, her voice trembling but firm. "I said, delete it." A struggle, a shatter. The phone hit the ground. Glass and light fractured across the tiles. Julian's face twisted with rage, and his arm flew. A rough shove that sent Amara crashing into the edge of a glass table. Pain bloomed down her arm like fire. "Pathetic," he muttered, stepping over her. But before he could move closer to Damian, a low voice slurred behind her. "Get out," Damian rasped. His words were thick with whiskey, but his gaze, fogged and furious, locked on Julian. Now, Julian hesitated, smirking, but the weight in Damian's voice made him back off. He adjusted his jacket, gave Amara a cold glance, and left. The door slammed. The penthouse went still. Amara winced as she rose, clutching her arm. Damian's glass-blue eyes followed her shakily. "You stayed?" His voice was softer now, confused. "I couldn't just leave you like that, sir." He blinked, as if trying to see through her. Then his head dropped back against the couch. "You shouldn't have interfered." Amara didn't answer. She went to the kitchen, fetched a wet towel, and knelt beside him, wiping the blood from his palm where glass had cut him. His eyes flickered toward her again, tired, blurred, but aware now. For the first time in his adult life, someone touched him not out of duty, but concern. The storm outside deepened. Rain slithered down the windows. Lightning strobed across the skyline. Amara's heartbeat matched its rhythm. She finished cleaning his hand, set the towel aside, and whispered, "You should rest, sir." Damian's lips parted, but the world tilted, and he passed out. The next morning, the penthouse gleamed again, spotless, orderly, lifeless. Clara Whitby, the head housekeeper, moved through the halls like a queen inspecting her domain. Her pearl earrings caught the light as she paused at the kitchen entrance. Amara was there, polishing silverware with her injured hand hidden in a sleeve. The bandage beneath it was faintly stained pink. Clara's gaze narrowed. "You're late," she said sharply. "I'm sorry, ma'am. No excuses. You were seen wandering the main floor at 2 in the morning. That is not part of your duties." Amara's mouth opened, then closed. Clara tilted her chin, enjoying the silence. "The master of the house doesn't appreciate servants who overstep. You'd do well to remember your place, Ellis." "Yes, ma'am." But before she could return to her work, the sound of hard-soled shoes echoed from the grand staircase. Damian appeared, crisp suit, silver tie, hair perfectly in place, the picture of control once more. Only a faint bruise at his temple betrayed the night before. Clara straightened instantly. "Good morning, Mr. Marston." Damien didn't look at her. His eyes went straight to Amara. "You," he said quietly. She froze. "Sir, come here." Every servant in the kitchen stopped moving. Clara's mouth twitched into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Amara approached cautiously. Her palms were damp. Damien's gaze flicked from her face to the sleeve she kept tugged down over her wrist. "You were up late last night." "Yes, sir," she said softly. "You were—" "I remember enough," he interrupted, voice tightening. "You argued with a guest. You damaged property. You crossed boundaries." Her throat tightened. "I was only trying to—" "Enough." His tone was cold, professional, the kind used to fire executives, not servants. "I don't tolerate insubordination in this house." "Sir, please," Clara interjected smoothly. "She's been growing bold lately. I warned her she'd embarrass the staff." Damien's jaw flexed. "You're dismissed, Ellis." For a moment, no one breathed. The words hit her like a slap. Amara's vision blurred, but she held her head high. "Yes, sir," she whispered. Clara's smirk deepened as Amara turned to leave, gathering her small bag from the corner. The other maids avoided her eyes. But before she stepped out, Damien's voice came again, lower, uncertain. "You'll be compensated for the damages." Amara stopped, just for a moment. Her heart broke at the coldness in his tone. "There's no debt between us, sir," she said quietly, without turning. "I only did what was right." Then she walked out into the rain. By late afternoon, the sky had turned to pewter. Damien stood in his office, staring out over Manhattan. His reflection in the glass looked back. Empty-eyed, perfect suit, broken soul. Clara entered with his schedule, chirping, "Your lunch meeting is confirmed with Mr. Price at—" But he didn't hear her. His mind replayed the night before. The phone, the shattered glass, the blood on her sleeve. He frowned, turning sharply toward the security console. "Pull up the hallway feed from last night." A few moments later, the screen flickered to life. The footage was grainy, a corridor bathed in soft gold. It showed Julian raising his phone, Amara stepping in front of it, her small frame trembling but defiant. Then the shove. "The glass!" He leaned closer. His throat tightened. There it was, the moment she shielded him from humiliation, the moment he had punished her for. For the first time in years, Damien Marston felt shame. Real, raw, human shame. He stood still for a long moment, the city pulsing below. Then slowly he reached for his coat. "Cancel my meetings," he said quietly. "Sir?" Clara blinked. "But now." Outside, rain slicked the streets. The servant quarters stood in the far corner of the Marston estate, small, plain, nearly invisible against the grandeur of the main tower. Damien's car stopped before it. He didn't send his driver inside. He walked himself, the rain soaking his shoulders, tie loosened, something unreadable in his eyes. When Amara opened the door, she froze. The billionaire stood on her doorstep, rain dripping from his hair, breath unsteady. "I was wrong," he said simply. Amara blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. He exhaled, voice cracking for the first time in years. "You saved me from something far worse than a hangover." "You deserve better than this." She stepped back, cautious. "Sir, why are you here?" Damien swallowed. "Because I came to make a decision." The rain hissed around them like static, soft but endless. Amara stood in the doorway, the warm glow of the servant quarters spilling against Damien's rain-soaked suit. His tie was crooked now. He'd walked through the downpour himself, something no Marston would ever be caught doing. "I came to make a decision," he repeated, his voice low, deliberate. Amara hesitated. Her hand gripped the frame, her knuckles white. "What decision, sir?" Damien drew a slow breath. "You're rehired, not as a maid, as my personal housekeeper." Her brows furrowed, confusion flashing across her soft, tired face. "Why would you do that after firing me in front of everyone?" He looked at her then, really looked, not at the servant uniform, or the bandaged arm, or the trembling hands. He looked at her eyes, steady despite fear, kind despite pain. "Because I was wrong," he said again. "I reviewed the security footage. I saw what you did. I saw that man, Julian, lay hands on you. You were protecting me." Amara's breath caught, but her face remained composed. "And now you want to fix it with a job title?" Her tone wasn't rude. It was small, quiet, heartbreakingly sincere. Damien's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being challenged. But tonight, he didn't have the armor to fight back. "No," he said softly. "I want to fix it by doing what I should have done in the first place. Trust you." A long silence stretched between them. Rain pooled at his shoes. Her lamp flickered behind her. Finally, Amara shook her head. "I can't go back, sir. It's not just a house to me anymore. It's a reminder." "Of what?" "Of where I don't belong." That word, belong, stung him like glass. For years, Damien had lived surrounded by people who pretended to belong. Investors, assistants, lovers who smiled for cameras. None of them ever stayed when the lights went off. He didn't belong to anyone either, only to the emptiness of his inheritance. His voice cracked despite himself. "You saved me, Amara. That makes you belong more than anyone in that house." Her lips parted slightly, not in shock, but something softer, something like disbelief. She looked at the rain, then back at him. "I don't need belonging, Mr. Marston. I just need peace." For the first time, he didn't have an answer. He stood there, drenched, the sound of rain swallowing his pride. Then, quietly, he took something from his pocket, a folded letter, faintly damp. "If you ever change your mind," he said, placing it on the step, "my door will stay open." She watched as he turned away, his silhouette fading into the storm. The letter lay at her feet, edges curling from the rain. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she picked it up. The next morning, the Marston penthouse was quieter than usual. The staff moved carefully, whispering about the incident. Clara, in her pristine uniform, poured Damien's coffee with her usual smile, one that always hid judgment. "You're early, Mr. Marston," she said pleasantly. He ignored her. His thoughts hadn't left that doorway. Her voice, the look in her eyes. Peace. "Would you like me to arrange an interview for a new maid?" she asked smoothly. "No," he said. She blinked. "No, there won't be a replacement." Clara's lips twitched. "If I may, sir, it's unseemly for a house like this to function without—" "I said no," he repeated, his tone icy now. "And Clara, if I hear you've been speaking to anyone about last night, you'll be replaced instead." Her composure faltered. "Of course, sir." He turned away, watching the skyline through the glass. "You can go." Days passed. The house ran like a machine, efficient, cold, empty. Damien noticed things he hadn't before. The silence of his dining room, the way no one looked him in the eye, the hollowness of the meals he never finished. He found himself glancing at the servant corridor sometimes, at the door she used to walk through carrying breakfast trays, at the faint scent of lavender polish she preferred. Small things, things that shouldn't have mattered, but they did. One night, he couldn't sleep. The city stretched below him, glittering like a million unsaid apologies. He poured himself a drink, then stopped, remembering the way she had looked at him that night. Disappointed, not angry. He set the glass down. Instead, he opened the letter she'd returned, unopened, but still resting on his desk. He unfolded it slowly. Inside was a single line written in her neat, looping handwriting. "I forgive you, but I need to forgive myself more." His hand trembled slightly as he traced the ink. He wasn't sure when his eyes had started to sting. Meanwhile, across the city, Amara sat in a tiny studio apartment with cracked paint and a view of the river. Her arm was healing, but the ache remained. She'd taken a temporary job cleaning offices downtown. Nothing luxurious, but it paid enough for groceries and bus fare. She moved quietly, still carrying herself with that same grace, but her thoughts often drifted to that night. Not to his cruelty, but to the look on his face when he said he was wrong. Nobody had ever apologized to her before. Not a boss, not a friend, not even her father, who'd left when she was 10. The memory sat heavy and strange in her chest. She didn't know if it was forgiveness or confusion, maybe both. 2 weeks later, Damian Marston hosted a private investor dinner, his first since the scandal with Julian Price. The deal he'd lost had nearly recovered, but whispers still followed him. Julian, smug as ever, was there too. "Glad to see you cleaned up, Damian," he said with a grin, clinking his glass. "No more surprise guests recording your nights, eh?" Damian's jaw tightened. "You're lucky I didn't have your footage sent to the board," Julian smirked. "But you didn't. Because deep down, you know I'm useful to you." The table chuckled uneasily. Damian didn't. His blue eyes were ice. "Useful," he murmured. "I think the word you're looking for is expendable." The smile faltered. "Excuse me?" Damian leaned in slightly. "Next time you touch someone who works for me, anyone, you'll be explaining yourself to more than just me." Julian's smirk vanished. The other investors went quiet. When Damian leaned back again, his expression softened slightly, but the glass in his hand trembled. He wasn't used to defending people. He wasn't used to feeling, and for the first time, it wasn't power that made him feel alive. It was remorse. Later that night, when everyone had gone, Damian stood alone in the penthouse, city lights flickering below. He thought of her again, Amara, and wondered if peace really could be earned by people like him. Then his phone buzzed, a message from a number he hadn't seen before. "Mr. Marston, this is Amara. I found your letter again today. You said your door would stay open. Is that still true?" He stared at the screen for a long time, his heartbeat loud in his chest. Then, finally, he typed back, "It's never been closed." The next morning, the first rays of sun spilled through the penthouse windows, cutting across the floor like liquid gold. Damian hadn't slept. He'd stayed awake replaying the message again and again, each word stirring something in him that felt both foreign and fragile. He'd answered her message, but she hadn't replied. Not that night, not the next morning. The silence made him restless. It wasn't rejection, it was suspense, and Damian Marston hated suspense more than anything in the world. He poured himself coffee, ignoring the tremor in his hand. Every detail of the room, The scent of polished marble, the gleam of untouched silver, reminded him of her presence that was no longer there. Then, as he turned toward the grand entrance, he heard it, the faint, familiar click of soft shoes on marble. He looked up. Amara stood in the doorway. She was in her plain gray uniform again, freshly pressed, a small bag clutched against her side. Her posture was straight, her hair neatly wrapped beneath her scarf, but her eyes, those warm amber eyes, carried hesitation. Damien froze, coffee forgotten in his hand. "You came back. I said I needed time," she replied quietly. "I've had it." He set the cup down, stepping forward slowly, unsure if she'd flinch. "And?" "I realized something," she said, her voice steady despite the tension between them. "I can't keep running from places that hurt me. If I did, I'd never find anywhere to stand." Something inside him softened. "Then, you'll stay?" Amara hesitated. "As your housekeeper. Nothing more." Damien nodded. "Of course." But the words echoed with an ache neither of them acknowledged. Clara Whitby's face turned a dangerous shade of pale when Amara reappeared at the morning briefing. "You—" she began, but Damien's voice cut through the room. "She's reinstated, permanently." Clara blinked, trying to recover her composure. "But Mr. Marston, after the damage, Enough." His tone was sharp, cold. "You forget yourself, Clara." The older woman's lips trembled slightly. "Yes, sir." As she turned away, Amara caught the faint flash of venom in her gaze. She said nothing, but the unease settled like fog in her chest. Days turned to weeks. Amara resumed her work, quietly and precisely. She organized Damien's schedules, oversaw the cleaning staff, and kept to herself. She avoided his gaze as much as possible, though she felt it often, lingering, thoughtful, almost apologetic. The house began to change. The staff noticed it first. The silence that had once felt suffocating was now softer. Damien's temper, once sharp as glass, seemed dulled. He didn't shout anymore. He said, "Thank you." He started eating meals in the dining room instead of alone in his office. Amara's presence, though invisible in manner, was transforming the air around him. But Clara noticed too, and envy curdled quietly inside her. One afternoon, while Amara was polishing the staircase banister, Clara approached her, voice low and dripping with false sweetness. "So you're back," she said. Amara kept her eyes on the railing. "I am," Clara's smile tightened. "How touching. The master must have quite the soft spot for you." Amara froze. "That's not—" "Oh, please," Clara continued, stepping closer. "You think we don't notice? The way he looks at you? You're clever, I'll give you that. A poor girl from nowhere, playing savior to the man who signs her checks." Amara's throat tightened. "You're mistaken," Clara chuckled. "Don't act innocent. You think you're the first servant to dream of being more?" Amara turned, her voice trembling but firm. "You can insult me, but you won't lie about me." Clara's eyes flashed. "You'll regret speaking to me like that." But before Amara could respond, Damien's voice echoed from above the landing. "Is there a problem here?" Both women froze. Clara spun around, feigning surprise. "Oh, Mr. Marston, we were just—" "Clara," he interrupted. His tone was low, dangerous. "You're dismissed for the day." Her smile cracked. "Sir, I was only—" "Go home." The silence that followed was thick and final. Clara's face flushed with humiliation as she curtsied stiffly and stormed out. Amara stood still, her pulse pounding. Damien descended the stairs slowly, stopping a few feet away. "You don't need to explain," he said gently. "I heard enough." She shook her head, embarrassed. "I don't want to cause trouble." "You didn't," he replied. "You reminded me who really runs this place." Her eyes lifted. "You do?" "No," he said, almost smiling. "You do. You just don't realize it yet." That evening, as the city glittered outside, Damien found himself pacing the edge of his study. His mind wouldn't quiet. The more he tried to bury it, the louder it became. The memory of her voice, the strength in her defiance, the warmth she carried into every room. For the first time, he realized he was afraid, not of losing money or power, but of losing her. He sat at his desk and began to write. The words came haltingly at first, then faster. A letter, simple and unpolished. "Amara, you don't need my forgiveness, but I still need yours. I've lived my life thinking control was the only thing that made me safe. You showed me it isn't control that keeps a man upright. It's courage. Yours, not mine. I won't ask for anything from you. But if I can do one thing for you, let it be this. Tell me what peace looks like to you, and I'll build it, whatever it costs." Damien. He didn't send it. He folded it carefully and slipped it into a drawer. But the act of writing it left him shaken. 3 days later, a new test arrived. Julian Price. Again. The man had a talent for resurfacing when least wanted. This time, he appeared at Marston headquarters, unannounced, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Damien, old friend," Julian said, striding into the executive suite. "I thought we should bury the hatchet. The board's still talking about that charity gala next month. You'll need someone who knows how to charm a crowd." Damien leaned back in his chair, calm but cold. "I'd rather let the crowd eat me alive." Julian laughed. "Still bitter? Come now. Don't tell me this is about that little misunderstanding with your maid." The word maid dropped like acid. Damien's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Get out," he said. Julian blinked, smirking. "What?" "You heard me. Get out." The smug grin faltered. "You'd throw away a partnership over some servant?" Damien stood, his voice quiet but lethal. "I'd throw away an empire over self-respect." Julian hesitated, just long enough to see that Damien meant it. Then he turned, muttering, "You've lost your mind." "Or maybe," Damien said, staring out the window as Julian left, "I've finally found it." That night, when Damien returned home, Amara was in the study, tidying the desk. She looked up in surprise when he entered. Uncharacteristically unguarded, tie loosened, a faint smile on his lips. "You're still working?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Just finishing up." He hesitated at the doorway, then took a step closer. "Thank you." "For what?" "For making this place feel like a home again." Amara blinked. The words seemed to hang between them, heavy and gentle at once. He turned toward the window, voice quieter now. "You were right. Peace isn't something you buy. It's something someone teaches you." When he looked back, Amara's eyes were shining. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The air between them said enough. And somewhere deep inside him, Damien Marston realized this was only the beginning of the change he couldn't stop. The evening unfolded like a slow burning storm. The penthouse glittered beneath 1,000 lights, its chandeliers dripping gold and glass. A charity gala, extravagant, loud, and crawling with men who measured each other by the weight of their wallets. It was Damien's event, his attempt to prove that Marston Industries had heart, though he'd only agreed to it after Amara, with her gentle practicality, had said quietly, "Sometimes people need to see who you could be, not just who you were." And so he had done it. Half for the company's image, half because he wanted her to see him differently. But even now, as the string quartet played and champagne glasses clinked, Damien's thoughts were elsewhere. Across the room, near the catering staff, Amara was helping direct servers. In her crisp black uniform, her scarf perfectly folded, eyes bright beneath the low chandelier. To anyone else, she blended into the background. To him, she was the only steady thing in a sea of masks. Then the doors opened, and the mask he least wanted to see walked in. Julian Price. He strolled in like a man who owned the room, his arm around a model, grin sharp and practiced. Whispers trailed him like perfume. The board had invited him, of course they had. To them, power forgave everything. Damien's shoulders stiffened. "Relax," whispered a voice behind him, his assistant. "Don't cause a scene." But Damien's jaw was already tightening. A scene might have been exactly what he needed. Meanwhile, near the back of the hall, Amara finished checking the dessert tables. She wasn't meant to mingle, just assist. But something in her chest twisted when she saw Julian approach Damien. He leaned in, laughing loudly, the sound grating through the air. Damien's expression didn't change, but his hands curled faintly at his sides. Amara caught a fragment of Julian's words over the music. "You really did keep her around, didn't you?" "Brave move, given what people say." Her breath caught. "People say?" Julian's voice lowered, venom sweetened with charm. "The Billionaire and the Maid. Scandal sells, my friend." "Maybe I should have thought of it first." Amara froze. The blood drained from her face. Around her, waiters laughed and moved and clattered, but she heard nothing. Then, the sharp crack of glass breaking. Damien's glass. The music stuttered. Conversation stopped. Every eye turned to the two men in the center of the room. Damien's voice was low, trembling with fury. "You don't speak about her." Julian smirked, unbothered. "Touchy subject, huh? She must be very talented, then." And before anyone could move, Damien's fist connected with his jaw. The room gasped. Cameras flashed. Champagne spilled. Julian stumbled back, clutching his face, his smile twisted into shock. "You're insane!" Damien didn't answer. His chest heaved. For once, he didn't care about the investors, the headlines, the gossip. He cared about truth. Amara had stepped forward before she even realized it. "Mr. Marston." He turned, meeting her eyes across the crowd. His voice softened instantly. "I'm sorry." But it wasn't to her that he owed that apology. Not yet. Security escorted Julian out, muttering about lawsuits and reputations. The guests began whispering, scandal electrifying the air. The gala had turned from charity to chaos in less than a minute. Through the noise, Amara walked straight toward Damien. Her steps were steady, but her voice trembled. "Why would you do that?" she whispered, stopping a foot away. He looked at her, hair slightly disheveled, tie undone, still breathing hard. "Because he deserved it." She shook her head. "And what about you? What do you deserve now? Headlines? Scandal? You think protecting my name like that helps?" Damien flinched. "I couldn't let him—" "You could have ignored him," she interrupted. "You're Damien Marston. You don't need fists to win." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For once, he didn't know what to say. The music hadn't resumed. The guests were still watching, pretending not to. She could feel their eyes, some curious, some pitying, most cruel. Amara's voice dropped, pained and small. "You think defending me makes you noble, but all it does is make me smaller in their eyes." Her words hit him like a knife. "I'm sorry," he whispered, but it wasn't enough. She turned away, blinking back tears. "You can't fix everything with apologies, Damien." Later, after the guests had gone and the cleaners moved through the ballroom, Damien stood alone beneath the chandelier. His knuckles were bruised. The echo of her voice still rang in his head. "You can't fix everything with apologies." He sank into a chair, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. For the first time in his adult life, Damien Marston felt powerless. Amara returned to the servants' wing late that night. The rain outside had returned, soft, relentless. She sat by her window, unwrapping her scarf, her hands trembling. She wasn't angry, not truly. She was tired. Tired of always being the one people looked through. Tired of being spoken for, protected, dismissed, forgiven, forgotten. But most of all, she was tired of the quiet ache that came every time he looked at her. That unspoken tether she didn't know how to cut. She closed her eyes. "You can't stay here forever," she told herself. "You have to go before this becomes something worse." And yet, when she finally drifted to sleep, her dreams betrayed her. In them, she saw him, not as the billionaire, not as her boss, but as a man kneeling before her, rain in his hair, eyes full of something almost like remorse. She woke up with tears on her cheeks. The next morning came with headlines. Billionaire Marston punches. Rival at gala. Mystery Maid at the center of it all. High society scandal. The woman behind the fall. Damien's office phone wouldn't stop ringing. His PR team begged him for statements. His board demanded explanations. He gave them none. Only one thing mattered: finding her. When he finally reached the servant wing, her room was empty. Bed neatly made. Scarf folded. Letter on the nightstand. He picked it up slowly, unfolding it with shaking fingers. "You said once your door would stay open. I need to close mine now, for both of us. Thank you for seeing me, when no one else did." Amara, for a long time, he stood there, the letter trembling in his hand. Then he sank onto her bed, the only place in the mansion that had ever felt alive, and whispered, almost to himself, "I didn't see you soon enough." Outside, the storm broke open again, rattling the windows, and in the quiet aftermath of everything he'd destroyed in her name, Damien Marston finally began to understand what love was. Not power, not control, but the unbearable courage to let someone go. The city's heartbeat carried on without them. In the weeks that followed the gala, the world moved as though nothing had changed. But for Damien Marston, nothing was the same. His penthouse felt hollow, stripped of warmth. Every polished surface reflected a man he no longer recognized. He'd built his life on control. Now all he felt was loss. The scandal didn't fade easily. The tabloids called him the unhinged billionaire. The stock wavered. Julian Price milked every ounce of drama for sympathy, appearing on interviews with a bruised jaw and a smirk that made Damien want to break it again. But worse than all of it was her absence. Amara. He'd search her name online sometimes, though he doubted she'd post anything. She was too private, too careful. Still, he found nothing. No traces of where she'd gone, no photos, no mentions. It was as if she'd been swallowed by the world, erased by her own quiet dignity. And maybe that was the point. Amara had returned to her old neighborhood, a quiet part of Harlem lined with stoops and faded brick. It wasn't much, but it was home. She rented a small room above a bakery, the kind that smelled of cinnamon and coffee every morning. The woman who owned it, Mrs. Garrett, let her help out behind the counter sometimes in exchange for reduced rent. Amara didn't mind. She liked the rhythm, the soft chatter of regulars, the hiss of the espresso machine, the peace of anonymity. Every morning, she'd tie her hair back, wipe down tables, and pretend the world hadn't once called her the billionaire's maid. But sometimes, when the sun hit the window just right, she'd see her reflection, and the ache would return. The one she tried not to name, because she missed him. She missed the quiet way he'd started saying her name, as if it meant something more than obligation. She missed the mornings when his coffee would grow cold on his desk, while he listened to her talk about her mother's recipes, or her dream of becoming a nurse one day. She missed the way he'd looked at her, not like she was invisible, but like she'd finally been seen. Meanwhile, Damien had begun to unravel. His company meetings dragged. His temper, once sharp and cold, had dulled into silence. When people asked if he was all right, he lied with the same precision he once used to close deals. He told himself he'd let her go for her own good. But his chest still burned with everything he hadn't said. One night, after too much whiskey and not enough sleep, he made a decision. He told his driver to take him to Harlem. The city blurred past, glass, rain, neon. He didn't even know where she lived, only that she'd once mentioned a bakery her mother used to love. It was a thread, fragile but enough. When the car finally stopped in front of Garrett's bakery, he hesitated. The place looked humble, lit by soft yellow light, laughter spilling faintly from inside. He stepped out anyway. The bell over the door chimed, and there she was, behind the counter, in a simple apron, hair tied back, smile faint but real. The sight hit him harder than any punch ever could. She looked up, eyes widening as the world stilled around them. For a heartbeat, she said nothing. Then, softly, Damien. The sound of his name from her lips almost undid him. He swallowed hard. "You're here." "I'm working," she said simply, her voice calm but guarded. "And you shouldn't be." He nodded, shame flickering across his face. "You're right, but I had to see you." Amara's expression softened, not in forgiveness, but understanding. "Why?" He hesitated, then spoke quietly. "Because I realized I was never protecting you. I was protecting myself from the truth that I needed you more than I ever admitted." The bakery had gone silent. Mrs. Garrett, from the back, watched with a knowing glance before slipping out discreetly. Amara crossed her arms, her posture steady. "You don't get to say that now. Not after everything." "I know," he said, "but I needed to tell you anyway." She turned away, wiping a counter that was already clean. "Do you know what it felt like, Damien? To wake up every day in that mansion, walking on eggshells around people who couldn't even look at me without disgust? To serve food they wouldn't touch if they knew who cooked it?" He said nothing. Her voice wavered. "And then, you. You were supposed to be the worst of them. But then you weren't. You listened. You made me believe things could change." Tears shimmered in her eyes, though she blinked them away. "And then you proved the world right again. that no matter how kind you seemed, your anger would always speak louder. He stepped closer, just enough for her to feel his breath. You're right. I ruined everything that mattered because I didn't know how to care without control. But I'm trying, Amara. I'm trying to be the man you saw in me before I even saw him myself. She stared at him. The same man who had once towered above her in arrogance, now standing before her stripped of everything but regret. And for the first time, she saw him, truly saw him, not as her boss, not as a billionaire, but as a broken man trying to find his way home. The bell above the door rang again. A journalist, camera slung over his shoulder, eyes lighting up with recognition. Mr. Marston, so the rumors were true. Damien froze. Amara's expression hardened instantly. The reporter's voice rose gleefully. The runaway maid and the scandalous boss, back together again. Perfect headline. Damien turned to him, calm but deadly. Get out! Just a quote. Out! His tone left no room for argument. The reporter backed away, muttering curses, but not before snapping one last picture. Amara sighed, her shoulders sinking. You see? This is why I left. I'll handle it, Damien said, his voice low but firm. You won't be dragged through it again. I'll make sure of it. You can't protect me from what people think. Then I'll stop caring what they think. She met his gaze, and for the first time since the gala, he wasn't the ruthless billionaire or the reckless savior. He was just a man, standing in front of the woman he'd wronged, asking for a second chance. Her voice trembled. Why are you really here, Damien? He stepped closer, heart pounding. Because I'd rather be hated with you than worshipped without you. The silence between them deepened. Fragile, trembling, alive. Outside, rain began to fall again, tapping softly against the glass. She didn't speak. She only turned the sign on the door to closed, then whispered, Sit down. We'll talk, he did, and for the first time in months, Damien Marston felt something close to peace. But outside, the world was already shifting again. The photo from that night, him in her bakery, standing too close, hit the internet by dawn. And by morning, the storm would begin all over again. The morning broke like a siren. By sunrise, the photo had already gone viral. Damien Marston, billionaire pariah, standing in a tiny Harlem bakery beside the woman the media had dubbed the maid who ruined him. Within hours, news trucks swarmed the narrow street. Paparazzi shouted questions across the sidewalk, their cameras flashing through the bakery's windows like bursts of lightning. Mr. Marston, are you two together? Did she blackmail you? Is this your idea of redemption? Amara stood frozen behind the counter, her hands trembling as the noise grew louder. Mrs. Garrett locked the doors, but it was useless. The glass shook beneath the weight of their curiosity. Damien stood beside her, face unreadable, but eyes burning. I'll make it stop, he murmured. She turned to him, her voice shaking. You can't make this stop. You started it. His silence was a confession. She stepped back, clutching her apron, her breath unsteady. Do you have any idea what this means for me? They'll never let me live in peace now. Never. I'll protect you, he said automatically. Amara's eyes flashed with anger. A rare and beautiful thing, like thunder splitting the sky. That's the problem, Damien. You keep trying to protect me like I'm something you own. Her voice broke. I didn't save you that night because I wanted your gratitude or your guilt. I did it because I saw a man drowning in his own life. And I thought maybe, if I helped you breathe, you'd stop pulling everyone else under with you." The room went still. He looked at her, wounded but quiet. "And I did, didn't I?" "Yes," she whispered. "You did." By midday, reporters began interviewing anyone who would talk. Some said Amara had always looked too confident for a maid. Others swore they'd seen the way he watched her at parties. The internet twisted the story into a spectacle of class, race, and scandal. And she became its unwilling centerpiece. That evening, she returned to her room above the bakery and locked the door. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the faint glow of her phone. Headline after headline, her name dissected by strangers who'd never met her. Gold digger or guardian angel? The maid who changed a billionaire? Marston's downfall or his redemption? Tears blurred her vision. She turned the phone off and buried her face in her hands. For a long time, she didn't move. Then, a knock. She hesitated before opening it. Damien stood there, rain-slicked and tired. A man at war with his own reflection. She didn't invite him in. But she didn't close the door either. "Amara," he said softly, "please, just listen." Her jaw tightened, but she nodded once. "I know I've hurt you more than I've helped you. I thought I could fix it with money, or power, or anger. But I see now those were just ways to keep from saying what mattered." He took a breath. "I care about you, not because you saved me that night, not because you stood by me when no one else would, but because you're the only person who ever saw me and didn't flinch." Her eyes softened, but she said nothing. He continued, voice trembling. "Tomorrow I'm holding a press conference. They want me to deny it all, to say you manipulated me. To save face?" She frowned. "And you will, won't you?" He shook his head. "No, I'm going to tell them the truth." Amara blinked. "What truth?" "That you were never my scandal. You were my salvation." The next morning was chaos. The Marston Industries press hall overflowed. Journalists packed shoulder to shoulder, cameras flashing, microphones crowding the podium. Damien walked in, dressed in a simple black suit, no tie, no bodyguards. His PR team looked pale, already predicting disaster. The murmur died as he took the stage. He stood still for a moment, scanning the sea of faces. Then he began, "I've been called a lot of things these past few months. Arrogant, violent, unhinged. Most of it's true. But today, I want to talk about the one name that never belonged to me at all." He paused. Amara Lewis. A ripple moved through the crowd. Pens scribbling, lenses focusing. She worked for me. She saw me at my lowest, drunk, reckless, broken. And instead of walking away, she pulled me back. She saved my life. And what did I do? I let the world drag her name through the mud to protect my own. He took a breath, voice steady but raw. "That ends today." He turned toward the cameras. "Amara Lewis deserves an apology, not from me alone, but from every person who's ever mistaken grace for weakness." The silence after his speech was deafening. The video spread within hours, his confession, his vulnerability, his public defense of her name. People didn't know whether to admire or despise him, but something shifted. By nightfall, Amara's bakery phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists asking for comment, people offering sympathy, even donations for her to start fresh. She didn't answer any of them. Instead, she watched his speech on an old laptop. When it ended, she sat in silence, tears running freely this time. Not because she forgave him, but because, for the first time, she believed he understood. Days later, he appeared again. At her door. No cameras this time. No audience. He held a single envelope. "What's that?" she asked. He smiled faintly. A resignation, her brows knit. "You're leaving your company?" He nodded. "Marston Industries will survive without me. But I don't think I can survive without finding who I am outside of it." "And what does that have to do with me?" He hesitated, then stepped closer. "Everything. Because you taught me that power means nothing if it costs your soul. You made me remember what I used to dream about before money erased it." Her voice softened. "And what did you dream about?" He smiled sadly. "Becoming someone my mother would have been proud of." Amara looked at him. This man stripped bare of arrogance, trembling in his honesty. And though she said nothing, something in her heart began to shift. For the first time, she didn't see the billionaire who'd broken her world apart. She saw the man who was trying. Not to own her, not to save her, but to deserve her forgiveness. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city's lights shimmered like a promise waiting to be kept. He turned to leave, but she spoke softly. "Damien," he paused, "if you're really done with that life, come by tomorrow morning. We always need help in the bakery." He smiled, small, genuine, disbelieving. "You're serious?" She shrugged, hiding a faint smile. "We'll see if you can make coffee without setting off the fire alarm." For the first time in a long time, he laughed. A quiet, broken, human sound. And as he stepped out into the cooling night, Damien Marston felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The smell of fresh bread filled the little bakery, soft and warm, like forgiveness baked into air. Morning light spilled through the windows, catching on the steam from cups and the flakes of croissants being brushed with butter. Harlem was waking up. The hum of buses, the rhythm of footsteps, the laughter of school kids, and behind the counter stood Damien Marston. The billionaire who once owned half the city was now wrestling with an espresso machine. "Push. Don't slam," Amara said from the register, amusement tugging at her lips as she watched him frown in concentration. "I am pushing." "Then why does it sound like you're interrogating it?" He glanced up, mock glare softening into a smile. "You sure this thing isn't defective?" "Only operator error, Mr. Marston." He paused at the name and she smiled faintly. "Sorry, Damien." He liked how she said it now. Softer, easier. Not the hesitant tone of an employee speaking to her employer, but the natural rhythm of two people learning to exist side by side. In the weeks that followed his resignation, the story slowly lost its claws. The internet found new scandals to feed on, new names to chew apart. By the time the noise faded, Damien had become almost invisible, and he liked it that way. He rented a small apartment above a bookstore a few blocks away. Some days, he helped Mrs. Garrett repair old shelves. Other days, he delivered pastries to regulars. He worked with his hands, learned how to knead dough, how to scrub counters until they shined. It was humbling and strangely peaceful. Every evening, after closing time, he and Amara would sit on the curb outside the bakery with paper cups of coffee, watching the sunset paint the bricks gold. He'd talk about his mother, a schoolteacher who'd believed kindness was the highest form of intelligence. Amara would listen quietly, sometimes telling him stories of her own mother, who'd cleaned houses all her life, but still found joy in small things, like humming while folding laundry or saving every tip in a little tin marked "Someday." They found in each other the echo of something they'd both lost. Family, but peace. Real peace never arrives without a test. One evening, as they were locking up, a black car pulled up outside. The door opened, and Julian Price stepped out. Gone was the smirk. His face looked worn, thinner, but the eyes were still sharp. "Damien," he said coolly. "You've fallen far." Damien didn't rise to the bait. "And yet somehow, I feel taller than I ever did." Julian's eyes flicked to Amara. "So this is the life, then? Baking bread, serving coffee, playing the humble savior?" Amara crossed her arms. "What do you want, Mr. Price?" He smiled faintly. "An apology. Publicly. You ruined my reputation with your little stunt." Damien's voice was steady. "You did that yourself," Julian's jaw clenched. "Do you know what it's like to lose everything?" Damien glanced around, at the bakery, at Amara, at the quiet simplicity of his new life. "Yes," he said, "and to realize it was the best thing that ever happened to me." Julian scoffed. "You think this is noble? You're nothing now." Damien stepped closer, calm but firm. "No, Julian, for the first time, I'm someone." The words hung between them, heavy, undeniable. Julian sneered, muttered something under his breath, and got back into his car. The door slammed, and the black sedan pulled away. Swallowed by city lights, Amara looked at Damien, eyes softening with something she hadn't let herself feel in months. Pride. That night, after they closed up, Amara sat on the bakery counter while Damien wiped down the last table. "You didn't lose your temper," she said quietly. He looked up, smiling. "You noticed." "I did." He tossed the rag into the sink, leaning against the wall across from her. "I've been thinking about something," he said. "Dangerous words from you." He laughed. "Fair, but I've been thinking about starting a foundation for domestic workers, maids, janitors, cleaners, people who never get seen but hold the world together." Her eyebrows lifted. "That's beautiful," he shrugged. "I don't have a company anymore, but I still have enough to make a difference. I want to put it somewhere that matters." "And why tell me?" she asked softly. "Because," he said, stepping closer, "I want you to run it." She blinked, startled. "Me? You know what it means to live that life. You've seen both sides, what it's like to serve and what it's like to be dismissed. You'd build it with heart, not ego." Her throat tightened. "Damien, He shook his head. "No pressure, just think about it." She smiled faintly, blinking back tears. "You really are changing," he smiled back. "No, you just made me remember who I was supposed to be." Weeks later, they launched it together. The Lewis Foundation for Invisible Hands. At the small press event, Amara stood at the podium, confident, radiant, her voice steady as she spoke of dignity, equality, and second chances. Damien stood behind her, not as the face of power but as quiet support. He didn't need the spotlight anymore. When the applause ended, she turned slightly, meeting his eyes. For a moment, the world fell away. He mouthed the words, "Thank you." And she, smiling through tears, mouthed back, "You're welcome." Months later, in the quiet glow of a late evening, they closed the bakery together one last time before it changed signs. From Garrett's Bakery to Amara's Hearth. Damien lingered by the door. "You ever think about that night?" he asked softly. She looked at him. "The night I pulled you off the street?" He nodded. "Sometimes," she said. "You were a mess," he smiled. "Still am, probably." She stepped closer, eyes warm. "Less than before." The space between them grew smaller, filled with the weight of everything unspoken. The pain, the growth, the forgiveness neither of them had to name aloud. And then, quietly, she reached out, resting her hand against his chest. "You found your way back," she whispered. He covered her hand with his voice low and rough. "Only because you showed me the way." For a moment, neither moved. The lights dimmed, the rain began to fall again, soft and silver against the windows, and in that small, ordinary bakery, two souls who had once been broken by pride found something stronger than redemption. Peace. In the end, the world would forget the scandal, the headlines, the rumors. But in Harlem, if you walked by the little bakery on a rainy morning, you might still hear laughter, hers bright and soft, his quieter, but full of something new, something like love, something earned, something real.